First of all, I want to make you a promise. It's one of those days in New York sports where so much is happening, and I promise you, over the course of the next 4.5 hours, we will hit everything. A monstrous 3-game series for the New York Mets in Philadelphia. The Yankees with another walk-off, but a question needs to be posed as Clay Holmes re-entered that circle of trust. The New York Giants are playing for their season, according to most. Daniel Jones is playing for his NFL career. The New York Jets are playing for the sanity of Jet fans. There is a lot to get to, and I promise you, Tiki and I will get to everything over the next 4.5 hours. But I do want to start in a place that I'm very curious about because I do not know the answer from my wonderful partner, Tiki Barber. And that was most Americans last night were watching the Yankees, and they were watching football. And all of us, and I've certainly expressed my views on how much I don't like the Miami Dolphins, but I also like Tua, and I like human beings. And so when Tua went down the way he did and the reaction that he had, I think all of us as human beings watching certainly reacted to that with compassion. And so what I've been wondering about since that injury occurred, and obviously there's a lot of football aspects to it, too, which we'll get into, especially how it impacts the Jets this season in the AFC East. But I thought about you, Teak, and I thought, what does Tiki think of this? Yeah. What would he say to us? So walk me through everything that went through your mind when you saw this last night.
Well, I mean, obviously, you feel for Tua because he's had so many. This is now his third diagnosed concussion, but maybe there's been more over the course of his career, going back to college and et cetera, even high school. And the last thing you want is for a kid like Tua, who is one of the great guys in the NFL, to suffer some long-term detriment to his health and to his mind and to his ability to play the game, or really forget playing the game, live in life because he's playing a game. And so my immediate thought was his career is over, right? This is it, because he's had at least 2 of these where he's completely out and he's posting, right? His arm is out. He's completely lost control of his functions, and that is serious trauma to his brain. Like there's a massive impact that shut down his body, and I can't help but think, is it worth it? Right. And when he starts having these conversations with his family, with his teammates, with everything, is it worth it? And it's a question I can't answer because I never had to go through that. But is it worth it? I see so many guys, retired guys, some of my teammates that are beat up physically. You get outside of the realm of the physical damage, and you see some of these guys whose minds clearly aren't there anymore. And a lot of it is because of the trauma that you take playing this game. And I can't help but feel for him. I wonder if this is it. I know he wants to play because he's still so young. He just got paid, but is it worth it? That's the question I keep asking myself. Is it worth it?
Yeah, it's the individual. I mean, yesterday, there's a lot of irony to what happened yesterday. Obviously, Damar Hamlin getting hit in the chest as he was tackling him was certainly something that jumped out at you. It was also the birthday of Andrew Luck. Yesterday was Andrew Luck's birthday. He turned 35 years old. And Andrew Luck is one of those guys who made a decision that was so controversial at the time. Yeah. But I got it. He was a guy in the prime of his NFL career at the age of 29 or 30, however old he was exactly at the time, who said, I don't want to risk that. And he made that decision. And I think as a fan, the way I look at Tua, and I really believe this, is as long as he's cleared to play, he can do whatever he wants. If he wants to try to play football and there are major risks that are involved, I totally respect that decision.
Right.
I respect that humans have the right to make decisions about their own body. I really do. So, yeah, I felt bad for him last night. I've always liked Tua. As much as I expressed to you, Teak, that I didn't like the Dolphins, and a part of why I like Tua so much is I think he's grossly underrated. And I think that Dolphin fans, in a way, haven't even respected how good he's been since he's come into the league. It's almost explained away. Like, every time he would make a big play, it'd be like, wow, he underthrew Tyreek Hill. And it's like, come on, dude. The guy's playing well. But it's up to him. Antonio Pierce came out earlier today and said he should retire. How about Tua should do what he wants to do? And he should talk to doctors, certainly. He should talk to former players. He could even give you a call and say, hey, what do you think? But ultimately, he's the human who gets to make that decision.
Yeah, he is. But, I mean, this almost feels like a we need to protect you from you situation. And you hear this often in sport, and usually it's physical injury. It's nothing, about the mind. But given where the NFL has gone over the last half a decade or even more now with protecting body, like the head, because of all the CTE issues and the repeated head trauma issues, and they've legislated out of contact. And I mean, hell, one of the reasons that the kickoff is the way it is because it was one of the leading, concussion, providers or causes in the NFL. And so, you can't let a guy, despite his desire to want to do something, put himself in physical harm for the future of his life. That's why this is so serious. And I know I'd want to play. I'm sure. I mean, I had concussions. I know I did. One because I was unconscious on the field. I got it back up and I played the next play or 2 plays later, whatever it was.
Crazy.
I luckily didn't have any long-term effects.
Right. There's
no guarantee that you're not going to have long-term effects, despite your desire to want to be out there playing a game that you love.
Yeah, it was scary last night, man.
Very.
I mean, you sit there as a fan and you're thinking about your fantasy team and you're thinking about gambling. And in my case, as a Jet fan, I'm thinking about what's best for the Jets. But as he went into Hamlin and as he wasn't sliding, and then that image, I can't even get out of my head now, with his hand making that movement, it was just scary, man.
Yeah, because he's not in control anymore.
Yeah.
Like he's lost function. He's lost, like, his mind's not transmitting through the synapses the way that it's supposed to. You just know it. Like, you see it. It's scary. I mean, I feel for him. I feel for what this means for him, because this is his third one in 3 years.
Yes.
It's a big deal.
And we all remember 2 years ago when he basically collapsed on the field after he got up. So we have the images of Tua dealing with concussions and us seeing it and seeing how bad it looked. Now, here's the other thing, and I really don't want to sound callous in this because genuinely my stomach hurt watching this happen, and I've always liked Tua for the reasons I laid out. But then you start to think, okay, they're a football team.
Yeah.
There's a game that needs to be played. There's a season that needs to be played. And the reality is this for the Miami Dolphins. I don't think Tua's playing again this season. I think that's kind of like I don't know if that's the likeliest thing, but my gut tells me, you don't think he's going to play again in his career, correct?
I mean, it's not because they won't let him. I don't think he should play again in his career. You've seen this with others. Steve Young, basically, his Hall of Fame career, it should have been longer. Right, because of the concussions. You've seen it happen with guys, and the last thing you want is for a young, engaging, kid who's got so much other things in his life that I'm sure are important to waste his mind away by playing a sport. Right? I know we overemphasize how important this game is,
right,
but it's still a sport. And it's a great way to make a living. You're obviously trying to achieve something with your teammates and to, galvanize a city or a town or a fan base, whatever it may be. But it's still a sport, and it's not worth sacrificing your long-term health for.
Yeah, I think ultimately I agree. I just want him to get that information and make the decision himself. I don't want the league to make it for him. He's got to make it himself. And if he talks to enough people, especially guys like you that played the sport and dealt with it, maybe that's a conclusion he's going to come to. But watching the rest of that game last night, thinking about it this morning, we transitioned to a football discussion. And here's the reality of football in the AFC East. And I say this without any smile on my face. I say this callously, really. I just say this about matter-of-factly. The Miami Dolphins are done. Let's just start right there. They're not good enough to overcome the loss of Tua, and that's a compliment to Tua.
And by the way, they weren't good enough with Tua in this game.
They were not. That's a very good point. It was a blowout before the injury.
Yes.
But look, even if it was just a simple blowout, I could kind of recalibrate, look at what Tua accomplished last year, look at the weapons on the Miami offense, and say they're a major factor in the AFC East. They're no longer that. Skylar Thompson is their quarterback, and while they still have great weapons, and A-Chain looked good yesterday, and Tyreek Hill's a burner, Skylar Thompson, who has started, 2 games in the NFL?
Right.
It's not good enough to compete with the Buffalo Bills, and I don't think it's good enough to even compete with my team, the New York Jets, who have a lot to prove.
Yeah.
They're done.
And from a football standpoint, you're right. Like, anytime you get pushed, you should bring out that list that you had yesterday about the spreads with the backup quarterback.
Yes.
It'd be interesting to look and see where it is with the Miami Dolphins.
So I looked at it and I was very surprised, Tiki. Very surprised.
Was it marginal?
It was marginal. It was the same as the difference between Aaron Rodgers to Tyrod Taylor. And basically what Tiki's referring to, we mentioned this yesterday on the program, is lines on how they would change from starting quarterback to backup quarterback. And so the biggest was Patrick Mahomes. Like, Patrick Mahomes is out, Carson Wentz has to start. That line would change by 7.5 points. Same with Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. And for Tua to Skylar Thompson, and I just categorically disagree with this. I think they're wrong. The spread difference would be 3.5 points.
Yeah,
and I
don't see that.
And I'll tell you why that's the case and why I've grown to like Tua. It's because of that kind of disrespect. He has been disrespected for the last 4 years. I think a part of it is because he's a lefty, as crazy as that sounds. I think lefties don't look as clean throwing the football as righties, and for whatever reason, people poo-poo it. And it's been going on for years. This is not the first time I've said that, but I do think from a football standpoint, I mean, I don't want to say they're screwed, but they're screwed.
Yeah, I mean, Skylar's just not the same kind of quarterback. We can't disrespect what Tua did a year ago, where he led the league in yards. In passing yards,
right.
4,600 yards passing and 29 touchdowns. That wasn't tops in the league, but I mean, this is a lot of damn touchdowns. And one of the reasons that they had so much success pushing the ball downfield to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and how good their run game was with both those running backs is because of Tua.
Yeah.
And Skylar's a different kind of quarterback. He's a different passer, and he doesn't have the experience. And so the best laid plan, it's out the window for them. Now, do I trust that Mike McDaniel is going to find a way to make it somewhat viable? Yes, because he's a good enough coordinator. Like he's one of the best ones in the NFL. So I think he'll adjust, but it's not going to be nearly what the Dolphins are going to need in order to compete in the division and certainly in the AFC.
No question about it. When you as a Jet fan look at the AFC East, I think we always thought the Buffalo Bills were the number one team you got to get past, but it would have been disrespectful to just ignore the Miami Dolphins. But I don't think they're equipped enough to overcome this loss. Skylar Thompson, like you said, hasn't proven he's good enough. I don't think this defense is good enough to carry this unit over the next 15 weeks. So I think the Miami Dolphins went from legitimate factor in the AFC East, legitimate playoff contender, to what? A 5 or 6 win team? Yeah. I really do think that big of a difference occurred. Unfortunately, I don't want it to happen this way, that's for sure. I'd rather just beat the Miami Dolphins at their strength, but that's the kind of injury loss that the Dolphins are now suffering as they try to regroup with Skylar Thompson at quarterback.
Yeah, and it's just hard. Any team, it doesn't matter what the team is. When you lose your starting quarterback, you just struggle. It's a different grind now for you, and that's where the Miami Dolphins find themselves. It sucks for them. It sucks for the expectation because they were supposed to be one of the teams in the mix. They went to the postseason last year. If it wasn't for a freezing day, maybe they had a better showing against the Kansas City Chiefs in the postseason.
No.
But the belief was that they were going to be a team. Maybe you get some marginally better, you can compete. That feels like it's out the window right now.
Now, here's the other thing about watching last night. And we all try to not overreact to one game, or in this case, 2 games. But the Buffalo Bills look freaking good. Josh Allen looks freaking good. The Buffalo Bills have responded to the slow start they got off to this season, in which I'm even thinking to myself, oh, my God, how great is this going to be? Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals are going to steal a game against the Buffalo Bills. Like, oh, my God, this is incredible. And you look at the response that they had after falling behind early in that game. You look at what they did, and this is long before Tua got hurt, and you look at, feeding James Cook the way they did and his effectiveness and how good Josh Allen is. Like, I think sometimes we forget how good Josh Allen is. As a Jet fan, I watch this, and I say to myself, there's a lot of ground to cover for the Jets to be that team and to beat that team, which is the goal and the expectation in this football season.
Yeah, well, there was speculation just that the Bills were going to be different. They lost, Mike Milano's out. They lost Stephon Diggs. They're diminished statistically from a skill position standpoint and, linebacker standpoint. But the reality is, as much as we, or you in particular, may dislike their head coach, they are a well-coached team.
You don't like him either, by the way, Tiki. I know you don't.
True, but
thank you.
But Joe Brady, he showed some of the play designs last night were just, the 4th down touchdown to James Cook, who had 3 on the day. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
it was like amazing to watch how he just manipulated what he knew was coming defensively from the Dolphins and turned it into a touchdown. So they got, they didn't miss a beat. They lost some important pieces. Both their safeties are gone, and those are good players. They didn't miss a beat. So you give them a ton of credit and realize that they are going to be a force. And a lot of it, let's be real, is because their quarterback is still really
Absolutely.
Really good.
Look, the Buffalo Bills, and I know the odds makers started to change things before the season. Mm-hmm. The Buffalo Bills are the team to beat in the AFC East.
Yes.
While the Jets have had some success against them in the regular season, think back to week 1 last year where they forced Josh into bad turnovers, even beating him 2 years ago. It's not like this is the boogeyman where the Jets have never beaten them. They are the team to beat. This is the team. When I'm sitting there watching the Jets on Sunday, hoping they can get their first win of the year, there are a lot of goals over the course of a football season. Goal number 1 is to win a game. That's on the docket for the Jets on Sunday.
Right.
Goal number, just one.
Get the first one out of the way.
Just one. I just want to have one Sunday just to start where I'm like, damn, my football team won. That's a good feeling. Then you got to win a couple of games in a row. And dare I say, like a winning streak, right? The next goal after that is to win your freaking division. And I think what we saw last night is one team is out of the way. One team is you could forget about in the Miami Dolphins for very unfortunate reasons, but that's the reality. And another team looks a hell of a lot better than maybe what we expected. But the Buffalo Bills, that is without a shadow of a doubt the team to beat in the AFC East. And I wonder, because, when Patrick Mahomes lost Tyreek Hill, there was so many questions about how he would adjust to that. And look, you're not better off without Tyreek Hill, just like you're not better off without Stephon Diggs. But maybe, Tiki, quarterbacks are better off not having a guy who feels like they need to demand the football and 15 targets a game. So while you
force it to, yeah.
Right. So maybe you prefer the talent, of course, but maybe it eases things to know who is my number 1 receiver, Khalil Shakir? Like maybe that actually benefits.
Well, it benefits because you don't have to worry about looking one way first. Or thinking one way first. All right, if all things being equal, let me get it to Stephon Diggs. Now it's like, all right, what are they giving me? Like, what is the defense trying to do to me? All right, I'm going to take this guy who's open. I don't necessarily have to target one player, and it allows a really good quarterback to thrive. I think it's almost empowering in some ways. And we talk about this all the time, putting great receivers, a great talent around a quarterback, but sometimes that works against you in some regards.
No, you're right. We got a lot to do on this very, very busy Friday. Your reaction to what we saw last night, not just the injury to Tua, but its impact on the Jets in the AFC East. And coming up, we face a very, very pivotal Sunday here in New York sports. The New York Giants against the Washington Commanders, the New York Jets against the Tennessee Titans. Not only who needs to win more, which fan base will be more pissed off if they're 0-2. We'll get to it coming up. Toll-free number is 888-808-1019.